I was sitting with a client the other day. He's a good man, hardworking, shows up with his family. And he says almost to me, kind of under his breath, he says, I feel like I'm losing in life. And it wasn't really dramatic. It was just really honest. Like he was letting me see the part of him that oftentimes he keeps hidden. Now, the night before, he was telling me that he'd been scrolling on his phone and one of his buddies just bought a brand new truck and posted it on Instagram. And then there was another friend whose wife was in Maui and she was posting pictures of her and her husband, his friend, having drinks. And then his ex-wife just got promoted. And meanwhile, he's like laying on his bed next to the woman he loves and he's feeling small. He says, I should be further along than I am right now. And that word should, man, that is like a gut punch because it tells you that your life is not enough. And what really struck me was that nothing he was actually really that wrong in his life. I mean, he has a pretty good marriage. I mean, there's things that can be improved. His kids are healthy. He's got a job that gives him meaning. But the second he started comparing himself to another man's highlight reel, all the joy disappeared. And it's not that his life is lacking anything. It's just in comparison, his story gets hijacked and he forgets who he is. And I looked at him and I'm like, buddy, I get this because I fall into the same trap. And here's the thing that I've learned. Comparison is the quickest way to abandon yourself because when we compare ourselves, we stop living our own lives and we start chasing somebody else's. And then we really disconnect from our own path and our own life and our joy goes with it. And that's where the suffering begins. And when you're not you anymore, well, then you're trying to be somebody else. Welcome to the Nice Guy Show. My name is Chuck Chapman, and I'm joined with my co-hosts today, Ari Graff and Faisal Kokar. And the three of us are dedicated Nice Guy coaches. We help guys that are self-professed nice guys learn to be more confident, develop better skills in their lives so that they can get the love, life, and sex that they desire. So here's the truth. The moment a man starts comparing himself to another man, he gives his power away. When he steps out of his own life and into somebody else's, he can feel it can feel a little motivating. Like I know that that's something. Well, like if I compare myself to somebody else, then I have something to attain, and it seems a little bit harmless, but it's not. It's really self-abandonment, and this is the thing I've noticed with a lot of nice guys, because our deepest wounds are I'm not enough, right? And so what we do then when we compare ourselves to somebody else's, we say, I'm not enough. I must not be trying enough. And it's like a throat punch, man. I mean, it just leaves you feeling small and paralyzed. Now, the question is, how do you stop comparing yourself to others? So, Ari and Faisal, I want to know, do you guys ever compare yourself to other men, their success, and what's it do to you? And what do you do to stop that? So, Faisal, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I keep telling Ari, stop comparing yourself to me. All
I
right.
know.
One day, you'll get there. I really like what you said was comparison is the quickest way to abandon yourself. And that's such a true way. I have worked with a lot of guys who do this and myself too. So my ego loves to compare, which is what social media just exacerbates it. When I go on social media, somebody's got more likes than me, somebody's got more views than me, somebody's got a better car, they've got this, they've got more money, whatever it is, the ego, the brain, when I let the ego just let it run, right? It's just constantly comparing. Oh, they're better at articulating, they're better at this. It's just like a never enough. That's what the ego is. It's never enough. So when I give it full reign, it just does this. And by the end of it, I feel exhausted, drained, and I feel so small in life that I feel like I've got no energy to put into anything. It's like, what's the point? Because I'm not going to live up to all of these comparisons. So I might as well just shrivel here, eat Prestos and pizza and just watch crap because there is no way. I don't have where even to begin. So yeah, that's what comparison has done. But it was a lot of work on fixing this as well. So yeah, not not a nice thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think one of the things that, like he said, that really kind of stood out to me, which is something that I've found myself saying to myself, is I should be further along, you know?
Oh yeah, I've
Especially
said
when
that.
you look at somebody who's maybe younger than you, or yeah, has a um, you know, seems to be luckier than you, those kind of things, that this word I should,
Yeah, I
that
should be further along.
I
That's
should be
I've got
further
clients who
along.
said it's yeah, that's another one because you you have like this benchmark of where you
Mhm,
see somebody, oh, okay, so they're in their 40s, they've got, you know, such a big business or and achievement, and they've got this house, they've got this car, they've got, why haven't I got this one? I should.
mhm,
That's where every all 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds. So we're only comparing the highlights, the best. So we're having a very fractured comparison is very fractured. We only compare like what the other people, right? And we don't compare everything else.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Ari, what about you? You ever struggle with this?
I'm guilty of this. I was guilt. I've been guilty of it uh, a lot this year. I mean, I think it's part of our wiring to
Mhm,
compare, um, and to I think one of the issues is uh, because we have such great problem solving brains. We've solved so many uh, difficult problems as a species, but we turn it on ourselves. We
mhm,
can turn ourselves into a problem, um, and it could be a problem that, well, I'm I'm overweight, so I'm a problem now, or
mhm.
I don't have a house, so I'm a problem. So we can we can always find ways that we're less than, um, or have less,
Yeah,
and turn ourselves into a problem. And I'm certainly guilty of that. Like, why am I divorced? Why why didn't I have a successful marriage out the gate? Um, why don't I have a house? And the thing is, yeah, I was married and we had a house. So it's like, why did I lose those things? Sometimes I still fall into that. Even though the reality is I needed to learn some important things, and I don't want to just jump back into marriage just because I'm jealous sometimes of people who are married. And yeah, I mean, so like I've learned valuable things on my journey. I don't even necessarily want a house, even though I get jealous of people who have a house. So like it's easy to fall into comparisons and get jealous of people, and we might not even want those things when we
right,
really look at ourselves. Is interesting.
right.
Um, yeah, for me, like the one of the ways out of this is this gap in the gain concept. I don't know if I've
Hmm.
talked about
Talk
this.
about that. What is that?
Yeah.
Gap
So
in the game. That sounds interesting.
it's two mindsets. It was created by this coach named Dan Sullivan, and there's a great book called The Gap in the Gain that he wrote with Ben Hardy. But it's basically this idea that most of us are living in the gap mindset a lot of the time, which is that we compare ourselves to some arbitrary ideal or metric. Like, if I just had $1 million right now, then I'd be good, or then I'd be
Right.
successful, then I would have value, you know, or if I had that trophy wife, or, it could be anything. But when you're in that gap mindset, that ideal is it's a moving bar, so usually, even if you hit that $1 million,
Mhm.
the bar is going to move and it's going to be $2 million, and you're still going to feel inadequate and insufficient. So being in the gap is a recipe for unhappiness and depression and stress. So the the other mindset is the gain mindset. So, and this has been so helpful to me when I teach this to clients, is that you don't evaluate yourself based on some ideal, but you evaluate yourself based on your progress. So looking backwards. So you just look at your progress, what were my wins yesterday or last week or last year or my whole life? So if you're always evaluating yourself based on progress, then you can always find wins.
Yeah.
And progress can even just be learning.
What happens if you
You know,
don't like those wins? How about if you look back and go, "Oh shit, man, that's all I've done in the last 4 years." That's because
well,
you are gonna even if you're comparing yourself, you'll have a really strong judgment about what you've done.
well, I mean, there's always ways you can put yourself down, I suppose.
Yeah.
But um, most nice guys, most people aren't looking at real progress they're making, and they discount the small wins. Even just like this guy that your client. He's got wins in terms of he's got a he's got a great family. He's got quality time with his family. He's got healthy kids. He is getting wins all the time, probably. But like most people, he's probably not recognizing them and celebrating them. So that's part of your way out of the comparison trap. If you're going to compare yourself to your
To who you
past
were.
self.
Yeah.
That's the comparison to make, not some ideal version of yourself in the future. Now, this
I
doesn't
have
mean
seen
that
I have seen that go wrong as well. Right, for example, what happens when the guy's like, "Well, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was really productive on it. Now I'm comparing myself with my past. I'm like, I'm abysmal." So
so
you've
what do
got
you need to learn from that? you know so there's always things to learn, even if
Yeah.
you've had a quote unquote setback, or fallen into quote unquote bad habits. um so you want to be mining your past for wisdom.
I think again, it's kind of perspective, right? Because you can look at and kind of you can look at a small win and go, well, that's not really that great. Or you can look at it and go, that was a win, you know? And I think part of that again is kind of like it's that self-talk. And I think, nice guys, but essentially we've generally have really bad self-talk. We talk to ourselves like we wouldn't talk to our worst enemy some of the times the way that we talk to ourselves. And so learning to kind of talk positively to yourself, but also then be like actually like looking at the wins. And I think the thing is like if I'm sitting with a client, it's way easier for me to see his wins than it is for me to see my own. And I think that perspective sometimes, and one of the things I like working with men about is it helps me actually grow. Because if I'm sitting there talking to some guy and I'm like, yeah, but you got this and you got this and you got this, and then in the back of my head I'm going, yeah, but Chuck, you know, you're telling yourself the same thing this guy's telling himself, and helps me kind of step out of that and kind of be able to coach myself a little bit as well. But I think, when we compare ourselves to other people, it really robs us of the ability to be in the moment, the ability to experience joy. Um, and here's the other thing that I don't do, which is probably, I don't know, probably just as unhealthy, but I don't do it. I never compare myself to somebody who's like unemployed and, you know, has, can't hold a job or a relationship or something like that. Comparing myself to somebody like that generally is not what I do. I compare myself to the person who I think is above me. And but
reminds me of a quote. It says, "If you want to look thinner, hang around people fatter than you."
yeah, right. Or there's that quote that says something about you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang around with. So if I'm hanging around with
Nice guys
people
don't
that
hang
I
around
think
with anyone.
it's true. But I think like I've heard that before. I was like, okay, I've got to get better friends. I want to be the sum total of, if I want to be successful, I have to hang around successful people. And but maybe there's truth in that, but there's also then I think the comparison of like, oh well, I'm not where I should be. And that's something that has traditionally kind of held me back, kept me less motivated. I think when I'm looking at somebody else and saying, oh, look at all the wins that they have. But if I can talk to myself in a way, that is looking at me and the positive things about me, then that actually gives me the more motivation to continue on. One of the things I've stopped doing over the last, it's been about a month and a half now, I think, is I've gotten rid of social media on my phone.
So good.
Because that would be one of the things that would be really easy. You're sitting there waiting for something, that my tire to get fixed. And I'm scrolling through social media and I'm seeing all of, the highlight reels of everybody else. And, once you guys know this, like once you start, promoting things of yourself, then you start seeing those things, same things show up. So in my feed, oftentimes is all these coaches that are talking about how successful they are and how much they've got, this and that kind of thing. And how, and so it's like, oh, I'm not one of these guys, I need to be one of these top guys, and that just sort of like kills the joy. So I've decided that, at least for present time, social media, if I'm going to look at social media, I do it on my computer rather than my, so I have to like actually like log on
You
type
should.
thing.
Here's what you can do: is you can put social media on like a 15-year-old machine, which takes
There you go.
forever, right, to
Yeah.
load,
Well,
and then
15 years ago,
it's
there was
got
a
like,
social media. So
yeah,
you won't find
perfect,
anything.
because no, it'll take forever to download one reel,
Right.
right? So,
But I do think
but
social media has been a thing of like where we do compare ourselves to everybody else. And
social media for me is a
it's
net
almost
negative,
negative. Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
not. I
Yeah.
mean, like, okay, cool, we can justify some cool stuff in there, but really,
One
it's
one of the things you I think alluded to, Chuck, was that this idea that we use comparison to motivate ourselves.
Mm. That's what I'll tell myself sometimes.
Yeah,
no,
and
you use comparison to beat yourself up.
Right. Yeah. 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 Well, or I'll say, well, okay. So the thing would be like, would have a thought that says, well, I'm going to take social media off my phone. And then to think, yeah, but then if I'm not looking what other people are doing, then I have no idea where where the marketplace is going, or that I should be,
I'll be left behind. I'm scared now.
right. So I can, I can use that as justification for comparing myself. And I think that just, it sort of just leads me to the same place.
You were saying about how like gratitude is important, or just looking at your wins. So in my private group that I've been running with the guys, so today's Monday, so every Monday we have this accountability. So in that one, we list all the habits that we've done, and the first section is what wins. So we have to list down minimum 3 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our challenges. Well, like, what was the challenging for that week? And I always get the guys, and I pick them up on this. I'm like, guys, you gotta put more energy and focus on your wins, because it's disproportionate how much energy they put towards the challenges or the negative side of what went wrong. And I said, let's bring this out to be proportionate. And our brain is naturally wired to be fearful, negative, look at problems. So no matter where you are in the world, if your default button is switched to negative, no matter how much you have, it's never going to be enough. You're constantly comparing, you're constantly finding emptiness on that. I remember I was at a car show and there was this really successful guy, and we just happened to be talking about life, success, and the world itself. And we got on, we got talking about gratitude or something, and I said, my ex-wife, there's one thing I really admire about her. Her attitude towards life is positive. It's always like there's enough, there's abundance. She has a very much of an abundant kind of mindset, as in the fact that always grateful for life, always looking at what is amazing rather than what's wrong, what's missing, what's not enough. When it comes to people, I mean, there are some other aspects where she can fall into the scarcity mindset or the gap, as you call it, Ari. And he said, no matter what happens, he goes, that's the best place to be. He goes, I would swap all my wealth, my Ferraris, and everything that to have that mindset, because he said, what goes on in here, he goes, is utter chaos. It's
Right.
manic. And he goes, it gives me no rest. It keeps me up all night, and it says, it's not the best place to be. So he goes, if I could trade it off, he said, if I could find a way, I would trade it off in an instant. So
Yeah.
sometimes we compare ourselves to people. We don't know exactly what we're comparing, the internal aspect to it. And
Well, I think
recently,
yeah.
it is true, isn't it? And recently I've been going to these marketing events, and I've been meeting a lot of influencers. I mean, these ones, there were lots of influencers, and they have like 100,000 followers, and some have millions of followers. And I noticed one thing. They were young. So quite a lot of them were young. They're in the TikToks and Instagram and all that, my splat face or whatever it is. So they're in this, but they're all miserable. Behind the camera, behind the screen, you talk about them. They're struggling just like everybody else. They've had these quick, fast wins.
Sure.
They don't know how to, they haven't developed a strong foundation where they can really enjoy that. So most of them had all this success, but they weren't really enjoying it, appreciating it, reflecting back on like, wow, this is amazing. They were like, oh, well, I've got 400,000 followers, but they've got 600,000. And I'm talking to a guy who's got 1.2 million. Well, I've got 1.8 million who's got 1.8. It was like, oh my God, you guys are so miserable. Like, this can't be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I've experienced that as well with some quote influencers that, I've known or talked to is, there's this constant worry about, how they're going to be seen, or, if they're on a panel, who are they sitting next to? And, it can be kind of, its own neurotic energy. But
I think another way out of this comparison trap is to focus on other people's needs and just serving other people. And this is another thing I'm guilty of not doing. But it is just like, actually looking at your impact.
yeah.
If you're a therapist or a coach, are you changing people's lives? Versus like how many hundreds of thousands I'm making, or what my social media size is, or like if you made a real impact on one person's life, like it's very meaningful. So we don't spend enough time doing that. And I think the three of us we're fortunate. We're in careers where we could see a direct impact on other people's lives really every day if we take the time to look.
Yeah, I think it's super important, Ari. You bring up a great point of like, it's really easy to look at somebody, somebody posting on social media or something like that about, well, my first month I made $10,000, and then my next month I made 50, and then now I'm at $150,000 a month, kind of thing like that. And yet, are they really having impact? Are they really having the kind of quality impact? Because when you're serving so many people, I think it's difficult to have that impact. And I think it's a difference between going wide or deep, and you can go wide and you can have a million followers, but you can also go deep. And I think just changing one person's life, there's something about that, and so I have to kind of remind myself oftentimes, just like you're saying, that my my role or my impact or whatever it is that I'm doing, it's the person in front of me, not the thousands or millions of people that are maybe seeing me on a TikTok post.
100%. And the tip the way I coach the guys on this is you got to heal that fractured ego. And
Mhm.
the most important thing I say to the guys is stop putting women, hot women, status, success, money, grandiose stuff on a pedestal. And I said that's the ego loves to put. Oh my God, he's making 150,000 and he's got 500 million billion followers and oh, she's so attractive. I said, whatever you do, what you're doing is you're constantly saying, I'm never going to be enough. Everybody else is above me. So the first thing when I work with the guys, or the second thing I work with the guys is healing their fractured ego or integrating their fractured ego, is so they're not putting things on disproportionately, in above them, or they're not putting it below them. So I'm like, this is a real balance for you of how you're going to see things. And then the second thing is that they also going to start developing more spiritually as well. Because when you keep seeing, like even for my life, what I've noticed is that I want less things. And to me, whether I have 1 follower or 5 million followers, I'm like, well, your feelings aren't going to be 500 million times more. So those things, I'm not chasing feeling. I'm not chasing those big wins and gradients. My ego loves. So I've really worked on really integrating my ego, really helping and getting that secure, so then I can work on my spiritual side, which is not looking for all these egotistical things that everybody gets pleasure out of. To me, that's not where I get pleasure. To me, I get more pleasure out of contentment, peace, connections, things that you can't put a measuring, you can't measure.
Mhm. Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
The other thing I'll add that Faisal was kind of getting at is like turning this into daily or weekly practices. If you're practicing your wins or gratitude every day, or sharing them with a group, it's a type of brain training. We are what we practice, I like to say. We are what we focus on. So this is a way to practice something else besides the comparison and being in scarcity. And this is the way to actually build a different sense of self over time. It's through your practices. It doesn't just happen overnight. And even highly evolved men like ourselves fall into comparisons probably regularly. You know,
Yeah.
Speaking for myself.
Yeah. Well, a comparison is actually a judgment, you know. And I think that's one of the things, again, it's a biological kind of thing, but it's also one of those habitual types of things where I get into, I meet somebody. I mean, when you get a bunch of guys together that don't know each other, what's topics do they bring up? You know, generally it's one of the first questions is, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And that question is almost always like a judgment type of thing. "Oh, you're a trash man." "Oh, okay," kind of thing. "Oh, you're a CEO, a brain surgeon," and that we tend to judge each other. When we first meet somebody, we judge them and we put them into sort of categories. And the problem is that anytime I judge somebody else, I'm actually judging myself. And it's a really difficult way to, so I'm not judging that person based on the quality of their marriage. I'm not judging them based on the quality of their life or their happiness or anything like that. I'm judging them based on what I think, you know, they they contribute to the world or society or something. So, and if I'm judging other people, then ultimately I'm judging myself, because I'm never going to there's always going to be somebody better out there.
There's an anecdote about the Dalai Lama that I just wanted to
Yeah.
bring up, he was at a conference in 1990, with a bunch of Western researchers and Buddhist teachers. A woman in the audience asked the Dalai Lama a question about self-hatred. And the Dalai Lama, hearing the term, became confused. And he had to ask his translator what that meant, because there wasn't an equivalent in the Tibetan language. So I just think it's so interesting to think about, that our culture has helped to reinforce this part of our neurobiology. But, other cultures might promote something else.
Yeah, true. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of the Nice Guy Show. If you've got comments, or if you struggle with self-judgment or comparison, let us know what you think in the comments. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can comment there. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to like us there as well. And
because if you don't like us,
then we're gonna, and we're gonna compare ourselves to all the other Nice Guy shows out there. So once again, thanks for joining us on the Nice Guy Show. I'm Chuck Chapman. Be sure to check out niceguyshow.com if you want to get in touch with one of the three of us. Our contact information is there, and we'll see you next time on the Nice Guy Show.